It is my privilege and joy that we can start a new Bible study about 3 cosmic messages. These 3 messages we find in Revelation 14. They are the last message to this world. It is the final message that will separate all human beings in 2 groups. The one who are going to live in the truth, or the others who are going to live in their deception and will earn by that the everlasting death. So it is a serious time in which we live. We have very serious things to study. And the first subtitle is Jesus wins, Satan loses. In order to lay a clear foundation for our study, we need to know the one parable that Jesus talks about in Matthew 7:24-27. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, and doth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house. And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine, and doth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. When the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Jesus is not talking about houses and how to build houses. He speaks about the human character. And that is composed of 2 elements. The one are the beliefs. The information, they built the house. There are many. But they must have a foundation that must be unchangeable in order to resist the wind. Because the winds are not winds or the rain. It is just about the false information. And the foundation can only be in the 2 ways. Built on something unchangeable or built on something changeable. And this is what matters in the end. All the information that comes to us, also called beliefs, if they are not founded on something unchangeable, will not stand the test of these last days of this world's history. I compare our beliefs or the beliefs of the human beings with this house that I found and made a picture of in Romania. A man built the house on a hill where he should have never built because the foundation of that ground was not secure, it was movable. But he thought he could compete with nature. He built his house on a foundation that was not fixed. And the house had to collapse. And so will the beliefs collapse of those at the end of time that have no unchangeable foundation. And among them are the 5 foolish virgins. They are in front of a closed door. Why? They were waiting on Jesus to come. They were together with the 5 wise virgins. Why are they at a closed door? It's similar to those that Jesus mentions in Matthew 7:22-23, while he says, many, so not a few, but many, will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. How can it be? Were these 5 foolish virgins evildoers? Were they murderers? Were they idolaters? Were they doing evil things? But these people that came to Jesus, or that Jesus mentions, it's the same category, I believe, that come and say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? In thy name have cast out devils, in thy name done many wonderful works. Now what should then recommend them more to heaven than that? Why are they called workers of iniquity? What is wrong? Because these are not the evildoers. These are not those that come and Jesus has to tell them, you killed here, you did that. No. If he would tell them that, they would show that they have not done this kind of things in their life. So, there is a problem with them because they built on the wrong foundation. They didn't do the wrong. They might have even had the right beliefs in a certain amount. But when the rain fall, when the information came that was a lie, they believed it, like we have seen it in the last 3 years, how people have believed the lies. The disease could come from outside. The disease could come from someone else than as an effect that God allows in the life of one to come for his salvation. Not understanding the truth. Having not an unmovable foundation. They will be seduced because they cannot stand. And for this, in order to make a very clear foundation, God gives the world, not to one man, but the Bible says, to every nation, kindred, tongue, the last message, which show them on which to build. Show them the foundation of that what matters. So no one should have an excuse on that day. For on which foundation he has built his beliefs. The story of finitude, or even a sense, has a beginning and also an end. This universe was working well without disturbance, until one day inside the angel with the greatest responsibility, self-deception arose. Everything was fine until in Lucifer something strange happened. This was the beginning of the story of death, of finite things for some of God's creatures. But God never created anything to have an end. He created all things to exist eternal. And because this happened in his universe and death entered, finite things came to existence, God is undertaking a work to remove it from his creation. Because the universe must be again working without disturbance, without that something should pass away or be finite. He made a time period for how long it should last until he will remove the error, the things that are final from his universe. And we are in that plan in its final stages, in its final days. And in these final days, God creates circumstances through which every currently living person can exchange his finiteness, his dead life, with infinity, with everlasting life. That is the message of the three angels. That is the message that God brings to this world. It is nothing else than the one that Jesus speaks in the Sermon on the Mount and summarizes in the parable that we have seen before. That's why we need to study them and we need to have a very clear sight of them. So how did the ephemeral come into existence? Because we must know that answer. If we don't know that answer, then how will we know how the solution is like? So man equipped with reason needs answers for these important questions. And like a physician wants to know where does disease come from, he must have for that a clear foundation. Or if a theologian would like to know where does the evil come from, he must have for that a clear foundation. And he must give an answer to these questions because they're not questions of low importance. They're not questions that can be ignored because these are the questions that everyone needs to know. Because that's the thing the three angels bring to this world. And those who have to bring this message, it's not angels, because angel represents us that are one with God, that has to bring this message to the world. We must know the answer. And the question is, how can we find the answer? What can we have as an orientation in order to find the answer? Now, I've learned a lot by looking to nature. And what we can observe in matter, we find that there are changeable things like appearance, size, color. But there are also unchangeable things like components, functions, and the law by which everything is dependent on. We can observe in plants. We find the unchangeable, the appearance, the size, the color, the smell, and the unchangeable. That is, the components, the structure, the functions, the basic needs, and the law by which everything works, the law of dependency. We can observe in the animals. We find the changeable, the appearance, the size, the color, the skills, the health, the disease. But we find the unchangeable as well. The structure, the functions, the basic needs, the law of dependency of every being that works in animal as well. And then we can observe in a human being, we find that which is changeable. The appearance, the size, the color, the skills, the health, the disease, and the opinion. I know you might look also to your mirror, and depend on your age, you will see that there are changes. But these changes are normal. They are there, they can be. But they're also the unchangeable. The structure, the functions, the basic needs, that which is governed by the law of dependency is unchangeable. And now the question is, what is decisive for us to know? That the hair with the time gets gray? Or some things in our body are changing? No. The decisive thing, in order to have a clear foundation, must be the unchangeable. And it's amazing how the devil has put all his emphasis in the scientific world, and all the people look to is to that which is changeable. And they don't look to that which is unchangeable, because he knows if they would look to that which is unchangeable, their eyes would be opened to see the error of their hearts. This is that what matters most. Because something that God made to be unchangeable remains unchangeable. Now, looking to the basic law, we know that nothing can exist or function by itself. It must first take, but it does not take for itself, but in order to give and fulfill a purpose by that. It must have an input, an entrance, and an output. It must have a cause, an effect. And it all works in a circuit. And God is the beginning of every circuit and the end of it. He's the creator and the cause of it. This basic law is that which is most unknown to the most Christians in this world. That's why they have no foundation. And this crisis that we are in, and that looks like it has gone for a while, is just showing very clearly that people have not understood this law, because those who have understood it could never go with the lies that were spread in this world. This law has given me the foundation for my mind, for that what I understand and for that what I live for. Without it, I would have nothing on what I should relay, because this is unchangeable, never, ever changeable. Nothing can ever be independent, and nothing was ever made for itself. Now, we find Lucifer. He is the highest, most exalted angel, the first created, had his fixed place in the cycle of the universe. God created him with a purpose. He was the one who stood in front of God the most time. And the question is, how did he become God's opponent? How did he become the enemy of God? And what do we need to know to answer these questions? Was it because God gave him the ability to love? Is the ability to love the cause? Did God ever give an angel or anyone that has a spirit like us mortal beings a choice to not live from his love? Was it a choice that Lucifer went into? What was it? What do we need to know? to not go in our approach to the things that are just philosophical. Philosophy speaks from a free will. Philosophy speaks from things that you say, well, if you don't have the ability to do the wrong, then the way you, if not in your creation, you have the ability to do wrong, then how can you do wrong? That's logic. But logic doesn't solve a problem. Can wrong be done only because you have the possibility to do it? That is, the way you were created must include that you can do the wrong? Or is there another way as well? So how do we give the answer? Because if Lucifer became the opponent of God, and then the angel, and then the man, when Adam and Eve fell, by a free choice that God gave them, then God is the author of sin. And then God is the author of death. God is the author of evil. And then why would he want to eliminate the evil from the universe? Why would he do such a plan of salvation and eliminate that which is ephemeral? Why? It doesn't make sense. And things must make sense to our spirit because it must make sense to our reason. This is why philosophy will not help us. Things that we just go by logic will not give us an answer. We must have something that is absolute. And that we can look at the way things were created. I've never seen an angel, maybe some have, but even though we have never seen an angel, we can know that there are changeable things in an angel. He might change his appearance, his size, his color, the skills are changeable. But what is not changeable is structure, functions, the basic needs, and the dependency, the law by which everything is dependent. Now, what did Lucifer attempt to change? The changeable or the unchangeable? Now, if he would have had attempt to change the changeable, that's changeable. Those things can be done maybe different. But this, Lucifer did not attempt to change the changeable, which would be a possibility. He tried to change the unchangeable, which is never a possibility. Because that which is unchangeable remains for eternity unchangeable. So any attempt to change the unchangeable is without reason. That's why sin and all evil that exists on earth has no reason behind it. It's unreasonable. I've never seen a disease from a process in the human being where he had a reasonable way to think. It was always unreasonable. Always unreasonable. So, Lucifer attempted something that could not be changed. So that's why it could never be a choice given by God. There's never a choice given by God to change the unchangeable because God made it so. So let's look to a spirit, his functions of a created spirit. Because Lucifer and the angels are spirits and we have a spirit. So it's a closed system, cannot be governed from outside, can only control himself from the inside. And this capacity that God gave to a spirit to govern himself is very often confused with the free will. So we call free will, but we actually think it's self-government. So yes, self-government is an unchangeable thing. But the free will is changeable. That is, men in their deception have no free will. If I would have patients that have a free will, how would I want them to bring the gospel that their will should be made be free? They're governing themselves. They're making themselves sick by an unwilling and unconscious process. But still they do it. No one else does it. So that's why they must understand, I do it against my own will, against my needs. Because I'm a prisoner the way I look to things. So let us not confound, let us not be confused or mix up the will and self-government. Self-government is set and can never be changed. Free will is free when we are in the truth. But it's not free. Jesus says, he who does sin proves that his will is not free. And the truth can only make his will free. So, free will is not the same with be governed, that you govern yourself. So an angel and we were made to govern ourselves just from the inside. So God cannot control us from outside. That's how he made us in his own image. And he made the Spirit to be always active, never passive. So that's why the Spirit must have an entrance, and we know the entrance is identity, and we know the exit is the will, where we take the decisions, because we need him in order to accomplish the task for what we were created. That's why we need decisions to know how we should fulfill the task that has to be accomplished. But in order to have power, we are dependent on needs, which we must take from a source of information. We cannot choose the source of information because all the things are not choosable. Some people sometimes ask me in my practice, what if I don't believe in God, or if people do not believe in God, what do you tell them? What do you have for a solution? I tell them, you have no alternative. God never in his law made an alternative to Lucifer or to the angels and to our spirit to be dependent on someone else than himself. We cannot take the oxygen except from the air. We cannot go into the water and take the oxygen from there, even though there is oxygen there in the water. The source from where one needs to satisfy his need is never choosable. Never choosable. That's why I tell my patient, there is no other way. You can only drink water from the well. And God is the only well. He's the only spirit where we can take our needs. There is no alternative to him. The law and the way God created us never gives us an alternative. Like also when we made the device, it must have a source from where it feeds, and that is no alternative. That's fixed by the one that made the device. So the same thing. We have no choice. If we cannot come to God to take from God, our lives are final and dead. There is no other way. We must have a binding through trust and must take the information through faith and by that work with it. So that's an overview of a spirit in general. But let's go a little bit closer. For self-government, the spirit needs clear reference points. Would you agree to that? Because how shall he govern himself if he doesn't have a clear reference? So here we have, he is made to be like a scale. So he must have on the one side the reference. That reference must be the unchangeable. Because if the reference is changeable, then how can he ever weigh correctly what information comes to him and what he has to do? So he must have the unchangeable as reference. That is the law of dependence. That are his needs, they are unchangeable. The source of his needs is unchangeable. And the task that he was made to be accomplished, he didn't choose. Because the Creator, when he thinks to do something, he makes everything that it should fulfill a purpose. And that purpose is not changeable. Adam could only choose how to give the name to animals, but he could not choose to give it to them, because that was the cause why he lived. I mean, that was the purpose of his life. Because every life must have a purpose, a task to be accomplished. So that's not changeable. And on this, you trust. In order to evaluate the information that you put on the other side of the scale, that you must take in by faith. Because without information, how will you accomplish the task? But in order to accomplish it well, you need to have on that other side that unchangeable thing on which you orient to do that what you take here in as information. So then the will at the exit needs yes and no, because he needs to do the things, but he does them only and always being dependent on the source of information and trusting. So trust is built on foundation, and foundation is unchangeable. Beliefs can be changeable, but they must be based on something that cannot be changed. Beliefs are many. You can have many things, but the unchangeable remains one, that is not being changeable. So trust is foundation. I mean, trust you build on the foundation, and faith takes in the information. So those are the two acts of the Spirit at the entrance of a Spirit. And identity is here in the center that governs that process. So there is a perfect construction without a choice for evil or for resisting God. All that is not found in the construction the way God did it, because his construction is perfect. That's why the question comes, so how did self-deception arise? How did it arise? It is a mystery how it happened in detail. But it is clear from what we see, the result of it, what happened. So, seeing the result, we see that somehow Lucifer had to come to the point believing he could pass that border from an effect to become a cause. That is never passable. God cannot become a creation, and a creation cannot become a God. So, how he came to the idea that he could rise himself to be equal with God is a mystery, because it is totally rational. But we see it now that it is there. We see it in us as humans, that we have the same error in our heart, believing that we are gods. Because the only way to do anything wrong is to want to become God as a creature. There is no other way. It happened, and it's a mystery how it started in Lucifer's mind. But it is even a bigger mystery when he saw that he's wrong. That he tries to change the unchangeable, which is not changeable. He still pursued. That is the mystery of mysteries. Because it doesn't, there's against reason. You must break your reason to do it. But the same things happened with us in these last days of this world's history. Every human being must understand who he is. And if he doesn't understand that he's a created being that believes further the way he was born, that he's a God, no way to ever be able to see the error. So, it is a mystery, but it was not included in the possibility of the creation to do it. Because there can never be a possibility to try the impossible. So when Lucifer became himself convinced that he's a god, then he passed that border. The unchangeable was not there for him anymore. He now was the measure of all things. And now all is changeable. The law is not anymore dependent. His needs, now he can make them himself. God as a source, no thank you. I don't need him. A binding, he thinks he doesn't need, but he still binds to the other angels. He thinks he trusts in himself. But he does not see that that's impossible. Like all these things that he tries is impossible. Then information that he needs to be able to fulfill the task, he now believes he doesn't need. And so he thinks he produces them himself. Humans believe that their information, the way for what they do or not do, comes from within themselves. But it is not possible. So at the exit, they have the decisions, but none of them is free. Because the will is now completely conducted by deception. The task that was made to be accomplished is not possible. Lucifer has destroyed himself. So did also Adam. And this is what is important to understand. It is a process inside of the Spirit. God could just from outside appeal to reason. But he could not stop it because it was inside of the Spirit. It was never an option because it was never a possibility. The Bible describes it like this in Isaiah 14:12-14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So we cannot understand the process, but we know what happened. He became, in his deception, the one that thinks he can be God. That's what we find in the Bible, but this is what we find in all evil things. It's the deception that a being that was created ever could become a source, a cause, while it ever is and will be an effect. So, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? So this is a question of how, because it's unimaginable. It's not explicable. It's a mystery. But it never was a choice. It was deception. And this deception, God must take away out of the universe. Make clear once for all that an effect can never become a cause. In Revelation 12:3-4, Lucifer is the dragon. We find him there, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. We know who the stars are. They are angels, and Lucifer here doesn't appear in a nice being, but something that is fearful. And in Revelation 12:9 it said, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So Lucifer became the dragon. That is shown here in Revelation 12. And he became an enemy of God. And we read from verse 1 from chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven, and it cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour the child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations, with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So here we see the dragon has an enemy. And he has an enemy. He wants to stop the salvation of man, which only was possible by the coming of Jesus to be a human, to be born from a woman, and bring the salvation over the deception that humans have fell into, in the same deception like Satan. So here is a battle, and the child is taken up into heaven, and we find him fighting there from verse 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. So here is also a physical battle, so to say, because they were put and out of a sphere of action, they were removed from that place where the angels say here, he was doing not good to them up there. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So here we see that he comes to the earth, and he fights against God. But he cannot fight against God, so now he fights against God's creatures. He wants to deceive the humans so that he can make pain to God by keeping them in their lost state. That's why he wanted to destroy Jesus when he was born on this earth. He wanted that things should remain like he wants them to be. But someone was stronger, but not with mighty power did Jesus overcome Satan. But he overcame him in his heart by never doubting that he was a child of God, and by never listening to the deceptions that Satan brought to him. And as Jesus overcame, in verse 11 also his followers overcome. We will overcome him, but not in a one-to-one battle like people think sometimes, but in insight of us. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. That is an insight change. That is the circumcision of the heart. And by the word of their testimony. That also comes from inside. And they loved not their lives unto death. So they have overcome that which is finite. By what? By an internal change in their heart. Because that what binds us to Lucifer is not Lucifer to us, but the human binds himself to the devil and to other humans. And this must be cut away. And it can only be cut away by understanding the process and knowing how things work. If not, people might do good works like the 5 foolish virgins. They didn't do something wrong, but they did it for themselves. They were not aware that their hearts were not changed. Or sometimes, when they were aware, they put it aside. Self-deception must be put aside in order to see the truth and overcome the devil. And overcome the lie that is in all of us, that we believe we are someone that we are not. So this is the introduction. We will go deep into the study in the other lessons, and I'm looking forward that we should build a foundation on which nothing can hit us, because it's unchangeable. And that's the overcoming of the evil, because the evil tried to change the unchangeable. But we rely on the unchangeable, on something that is so and will always remain so. So everyone gets the choice in these final days to exchange that life, his finiteness, with infinity, with everlasting life. And I hope you will be among those that exchange their mortal into the immortal. Amen.